Welcome. My name is Rabbi Moshe Ganut, and this is a short review of Rav Ginsburg's first live broadcast from a week ago, Sunday the 26th of June. The topic of the class was the book of Ruth, and specifically the many stages that Naomi and Elimelech, the protagonist's family, goes throughout the scroll of Ruth. On the one hand, Ruth is a very short book. In fact, it's the shortest book of the Bible. The minor prophets are all considered to be one single book, all 11 of them, all 12 of them, which is why really Ruth is the shortest book. It has 85 verses, and one of the first things that Rav Ginsburg explained is that 85 is the gematria, it's the value of peh, of mouth in Hebrew. The mouth, when we reflect on it symbolically in Kabbalah, is Malchut. It is the kingdom itself. And Ruth, who was a convert from the Moabite nation, she was a Moabite princess, ended up becoming the mother of the kingdom of Israel. And how did she become the mother? She begat the lineage of King David. She was actually his great-grandmother. He was her great-grandson. As much as the book is short, the main thing that you feel as you go through the book is that the protagonists keep changing, meaning that we start out with a very clear nuclear family, and actually this family goes through a lot of turmoil. The thing that struck Rav Ginsburg, which is what he developed, was how much this is relevant to so many of our lives. That really a lot of us go through a lot of turmoil in terms of family, with members of the family entering and members of the family leaving, whether it be because they've departed from this world, or whether it be for other reasons. And the Jewish family is always shifting. It's very uncommon to find a family that feels stable for many years on end. In any case, we'll get to that in a moment, those stages that Ruth's family goes through. The first thing that we'd like to do is just review quickly the three meanings of the name Ruth that the Rav talked about. The first meaning is found in the Talmud, and it says basically Ruth comes from the Hebrew word rivta, which means to quench the thirst. And sages say that Ruth quenched the thirst of God for praise by giving birth, in the end, to her great-grandson, King David, who wrote Psalms. And everybody recognizes Psalms as a major source of praise for God. The second meaning is brought in the Zohar, and there it says that Ruth is from the word re'ut. Re'ut means that she saw. What did she see? She saw the truth of her mother-in-law Naomi's faith. She saw the truth in Judaism. She saw the truth in Torah. And that's why she decided to convert. The third meaning also comes from the Zohar. And the Zohar notes that when you reverse the letters of Ruth, you get the word tor. Tor in Hebrew is a turtle dove. It's a type of a pigeon. And this was actually the meaning that sparked the whole idea that Rav Ginsburg talked about. At first, this idea, when I was listening to the class, also seemed very esoteric, but it really captures the whole idea of how family is different from other things that we have in the world. So let's just spend a few minutes on it. There's a concept called the pigeon-hole principle, which says, and the way that the Rav illustrated it was basically in the reverse. He used musical chairs, which says that if you have let's say 5 children playing musical chairs and you have only 4 chairs, when the music stops, the only way to get everybody in the chairs, since there's less chairs than there are children, is to fit 2 into one place. There's really no other option. But let's say that we have a system where that's not allowed. Like when you talk about a pigeon-hole, the idea is that only, let's say you have 5 pigeonholes and you have 6 pigeons. Well, if your rule is that only 1 pigeon can occupy each hole, then you're going to be inevitably left with 1 outside. This is very clear. There's nothing very special about this. What the Rav stated that was special is that there's an Israeli physicist by the name of Aronov, and he's already older, he's 83 now. He came up with a proof to show that in quantum mechanics, when you're talking about quantum objects like an electron or a photon or a muon or whatever it is, these rules don't apply to them, meaning that you could get, if you had 6 electrons playing musical chairs with 5 chairs, you could end up having, and this is very difficult to understand, but this is what you would get. You'd get all 6 electrons finding a spot to sit in, and you won't find that 2 electrons are in the same chair. That doesn't make sense to us because this is the quantum world. It's very strange there. The idea, though, was that there are certain things spiritually that act in the same way. And the family is basically built the same way. We're not regular objects, people that in the family, the members of the family. And you see that through the book of Ruth, the protagonist, the family, seems to violate this rule, and they act more like quantum objects. Now, the idea to figure this out is, of course, that whenever we look at anything, the first model that we use to analyze it is God's name Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei. These 4 letters of God's essential name, they are the source of all Jewish meditation. And by meditation, we don't mean crossing your legs and doing something like that. Meditation in Judaism means to think. It means exactly what the word used to mean. Meditate means to think deeply. When you think deeply about a topic, and that topic is Torah, your mind begins to enter a state where you connect to the Almighty. You begin to connect to God who gave the Torah. So any topic that we would like to meditate upon, think about deeply in Torah, we begin with looking at how would this topic, how would its components correspond to the 4 letters of God's essential name, Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So let's begin and see how it works, and we'll see how the protagonists, the family members, violate this pigeon-hole principle. So now let's start and look at the stages that Elimelech and Naomi's family goes through as we read the scroll of Ruth. Now, if you're having trouble fitting the letters together with the protagonists, with the people, just download the summary of the class, and it's on the second to last page. And then there's a summary of all the 7 stages that they go through, and we'll see that one of the stages actually has 2 parts to it. But in all, there are 7 stages that they go through. They start off with the nuclear family being Elimelech the father, Naomi the mother, and the 2 sons, Machalon and Kilyon. In that order, they correspond to Yud, Kei, and Vav Kei, to the 4 letters of God's name. By the way, I keep saying Yud Kei. Why do I say Kei? Because we don't say God's name. Even when we say the letters, we change the letters a little bit so that it's not even the actual letters. Really, it's the letters Yud, Hey, and Vav, and Hey. But so that I can say them in one sentence, I say Yud Kei Vav Kei, but really the Kei is a Hey. So keep that in mind. The first stage is very clear. The second stage, after they move to Moab, to the fields of Moab, they moved because of a famine that struck Bethlehem, that struck the Judean countryside. Elimelech was a leader. He wasn't just anybody. And his way of coping with the famine was considered improper. That was not the right thing to do. There's a lot to be compared, for instance, with why Abraham went down to Egypt. It's not the right time to do it. But in the end, he was found to have acted inappropriately. And he was punished by God. The punishment was that he died early. He passed away early. And now the family remained just Naomi, Machalon, and Kilyon, her 2 sons. So basically, the first pigeonhole, if you think about the letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, is like pigeonholes. So the first pigeonhole is left empty. Now, if these were regular objects, so it would just be left empty. But the idea here is that Yud Kei Vav Kei is always complete. The 4 letters of God's name, as they are reflected in the family, are always complete. They're always filled. Meaning that even if the family seems smaller or bigger, they will exactly fill, the family members that are there will exactly fill Yud Kei Vav Kei. And again, to do this, they have to violate what we call the pigeon-hole principle that holds in the regular world. And they act sort of like quantum objects where 2 can inhabit the same place, or 1 object can inhabit 2 pigeonholes at the same time. So what happens when Elimelech passes away? So the simplest option really is that Naomi, which is what would happen in a family if the father, God forbid, dies, the mother has to act, has to take the role of the father. So in that sense, Naomi is filling 2 pigeonholes. She's filling her old hole, Hey, and she's now also filling the hole, the letter Yud, that was left open by her husband, Elimelech, and his passing. But the Rav then explained that there are actually 2 more options other than Naomi filling Yud and Hey together. He said that, first of all, Elimelech is still present. How is he still present? Because he is present through his wife. The bond between a husband and wife is such that it never can really be taken apart. It is really, they're always unified, even after death. And that has to do with something that we call the Ruach de Shavik B'Gavei. It's a concept in Kabbalah. I don't want to get into it right now. It's not so important. But just to know, and this is very important for couples to know this, that once you've created a bond of matrimony in Yiddishkeit, that bond really suggests that you are one soul, both in life and afterlife. And so in that sense, Elimelech is actually still present in his pigeonhole, in the first letter Yud. But then the Rav added something that's even more surprising, and we'll see how this becomes important later. He said that actually there's another option, that the Yud pigeonhole, the letter Yud of Hashem's name, the first position, is filled by a soul from the future, by somebody who's still a mystery. We don't know who he is. He's going to be uncovered much later in the story, but he's already actually filled the spot that was left open, that was left empty by the father's passing, by Elimelech's passing. So that's the second stage. And the second stage here is a stage of judgment. It has to do with what happened to Elimelech because of his inappropriate actions. The third stage is when Machalon and Kilyon, the 2 sons, marry while in Moab. They marry, Machalon marries Ruth, and Kilyon marries Orpah. These 2 women are diametrically opposed, as we'll learn later. But here we see another violation of the pigeonhole principle, where Machalon and Ruth now inhabit the third position, the Vav, the third pigeonhole, together. Something, again, we said that can't happen with regular objects, because it can only be one object there. And Kilyon and Orpah, his wife, they populate the 4th position, the lower Hey of God's name. Why do we say that this is the third? We'll see in a moment, but this stage has to do with matrimony. It has to do with getting married. The 4th stage was when the 2 when you read it in the scroll of Ruth, it seems that the 4th stage would be when Machalon and Kilyon passed away. But here we find something very interesting, and this was not maybe so clear during the class itself. The Zohar, also knowing that you have to analyze everything based on God's essential 4-letter name, it also does that to the family. But the Zohar gives a different Yud Kei Vav Kei, gives a different model than everything we've seen until now. It says, and it says this consistently in a number of different places and in a number of different books, that the Yud Kei Vav Kei really is, again, Elimelech, or Elimelech's spirit, as we said before, in the Yud, Naomi in the Hey, Machalon in the Vav, but then Kilyon is not mentioned at all. What happens is that Ruth takes the place of Kilyon. She becomes the kingdom. at this stage. She becomes the fourth position, the lower hey of God's name. And again, the Zohar is consistent in showing that this is the model that we should think about. This is the fourth model out of 7. If you notice, this is a central stage. It's the middle stage. In that sense, it's the most important one. What is the Zohar really trying to say? It's trying to say that even though Machalon has another brother, Kilyon, because he and his wife, Kilyon and Orpah, are considered to be less rectified, as we'll see in the continuation, it'll become very clear. So Machalon and Ruth, they take their place from them. In that sense, it's like saying that the holiness takes the place of that which is profane, of that which is less, Kilyon and Orpah, sorry. So the central stage, according to the Zohar, happens after the marriage. And first we had Machalon and Ruth in the Vav, and Kilyon and Orpah in the Hey. But now, Machalon and Ruth take the place of the Vav and Hey, meaning they push Kilyon and Orpah out of the Hey. The fifth stage is actually divided into 2, and this is the very important stage where we learn that the relationship that Orpah and Kilyon have with Judaism is far less rectified than the relationship that Machalon and Ruth had. What happens in this stage? The first thing that happens is that Machalon and Kilyon, they also pass away. One explanation is because they could have dissuaded their father from leaving Bethlehem in the first place. Another explanation is that it was wrong for them to take to do what they did in Moab. In any case, they pass away also, and this is also a type of judgment. Notice this is the fifth stage. So Ruth and Orpah are left alone. We're going back now to the picture where Machalon and Kilyon are together with Ruth and Orpah in the third and fourth positions. Now, this is a bit technical, but again, if you follow it on the chart, it's very clear. Now, because they passed away, so Ruth and Orpah are the third and fourth positions. Naomi stays in her first position, and again, the spirit of Elimelech, or Naomi herself, with her bond with Elimelech after death, or the possibility of this future soul is inhabiting the first position. The fifth stage doesn't end that way. It doesn't end just with Ruth and Orpah being in the third and fourth positions. What happens in the fifth stage, the latter half of the fifth stage, is that when Naomi goes back to the land of Israel, she decides to come back, Ruth stays with her and decides to convert to Judaism, and Orpah leaves. When she leaves, she turns her head. That's what her name literally means. Orpah is the back of the neck, the olif. So basically, she turned her head, she turned her back on her mother-in-law and on the people that she had supposedly joined, the Jewish people, and she went back to Moab. The sages tell us later, and it's actually a very interesting thing, that she was the mother of Goliath, the very Goliath that King David later, as a young man, killed in battle. And Goliath was not just any warrior; he was the main warrior of the Plishtim, of the Philistines. Most importantly, he didn't just stand there fighting. His main thing was to blaspheme the name of God, and he did specifically as blaspheming as contesting the God of the Jewish people. That's how he called it. In any case, the fifth stage has 2 parts to it, which at the end we find Ruth inhabiting both the third and fourth positions, meaning she took over what would have been Orpah's position, the fourth position. So now we have Elimelech's spirit in the first position, Naomi in the second, Ruth in the third and in the fourth. Obviously, she, by being in 2 different places at the same time, she's again acting against the pigeon-hole principle. She's acting in a way that we don't expect regular objects to, or people to act. But the whole idea here is that being souls, we're way beyond just regular physical objects. We're acting in spiritual ways. And so in the spiritual sense, Ruth is able to populate both the third and fourth positions, both the Vav and the Hey. At the sixth stage, what we find is that Ruth comes in contact with Boaz, the living heir of Elimelech's family. And basically, the whole idea of the scroll of Ruth is family. Why is it about family? Because when Ruth comes back to Bethlehem, and now she's converted to Judaism, her task, what she wants to achieve, is to make a name, meaning continue the lineage of Elimelech and her beloved husband, Machalon. That's what she's out to do. And there's a concept called the levirate marriage. A levirate marriage basically means that the woman who was widowed and did not have children yet from her husband marries the closest relative, and when she has a child from that closest relative, it's considered as if that child is the son of the husband who passed away. That's called levirate marriage, or in Hebrew, yibum. That's really the topic of Megillat Ruth, of the scroll of Ruth. It's telling us that even when you think that family has broken apart, even when people have passed away, there's always a continuation. And we'll have more to say about this at the very end. In any case, she meets Boaz, and she thinks, and Boaz seems to go along with this at first, that Boaz is the closest inheritor to Machalon and Elimelech. But after she tells Boaz basically how that happened it's told in the scroll of Ruth, but she tells him that she wants to be liberated by him. He drops a bomb and he says, you know what? There's actually somebody who's closer than me. He never mentions his name, but he's called Ploni Almoni. Ploni Almoni is like saying John Doe. It's like saying we don't know what his name is, but beautifully, Ploni equals Naomi, and Almoni equals Elimelech. They actually, this name is like a composite of the two values of Elimelech and Naomi together. So now we have four distinct protagonists, four distinct figures entering into the family on the scene. Ploni Almoni, whose name we don't know, he's the brother of Elimelech. We have Naomi, who's still here, who's been here the whole time. We'll have more to say about that later. And we have Boaz, who is a nephew of Elimelech. He's not his brother, he's his nephew. And Ruth. So the fourth stage becomes that actually Ploni Almoni takes the Yud, the first position. Naomi stays in her second position. Boaz takes the third, and Ruth comes into the fourth position. That becomes our sixth Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why does Ploni Almoni go in the first position? Why doesn't Boaz go there? First of all, Boaz is not marrying Naomi, so he really belongs, because Yud Kei Vav Kei usually is divided into the first two letters and the second two letters, the Yud Kei and the Vav Kei. So Ruth is in the bottom Hey, so Boaz goes into the Vav. It's not just that, it's more than that. The Zohar says something very surprising about Ploni Almoni and Boaz. It says that Ploni Almoni was the soul of the Messiah, the son of David in that generation. When we say Messiah, son of David, it sounds sort of anachronistic since David has not yet been born. But what it's saying is that there's a soul that's been continuing throughout the history of the world, and at every epoch of history, it's been here in the world, and it's been waiting to appear. It's been waiting to reveal itself as the Redeemer. But Ploni Almoni, and that's why he's called Ploni Almoni, he stays covert. He's not willing to reveal himself. Why? Because he knows from God that the time has not yet come for him to reveal himself as the Messiah, as the Redeemer of the world. So therefore he remains Ploni Almoni, and really in that sense, he belongs in the Yud. The Yud is the highest level, it's the concealed level of God's essential name. It's the contracted level, the part that you don't see. And like the letter Yud itself, it's the smallest part, it's the part that has the least presence. So Ploni Almoni goes in the first position, Naomi in the second, Boaz in the third, and Ruth in the fourth. And then we finally, at the very end of the scroll of Ruth, we hear that Ruth had a son. His name is Oved. And really, and this is again surprising, Boaz was an old man. He passed away. and Oved took his place. So now the fourth stage becomes Ploni Almoni, Naomi, Oved, her son, who's really in place of her husband, Machalon. That's what we explained. That's what levirate marriage does. It gives a son who comes in place of the father that passed away, and Ruth again in the fourth position. Now remember that we mentioned earlier that there was a soul that may have been occupying the Yud throughout the first few stages, through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Who was that soul? It was actually Ploni Almoni. It was actually this Messiah, son of David, the Messiah of the world, who was still not revealed, and yet, because he was present, yet Naomi and Ruth didn't know about him, or they didn't understand his significance, still he occupied that first position. Okay, these are the stages. We're not going to have time today to look at, or at least not in this review, maybe we'll do another one later. We're not going to have time to explain why these 7 stages correspond to the 7 emotive faculties from loving kindness to kingdom, but you're invited to read it in the summary. It's towards the end after the stages are summarized, and then we explain how each one is related to each one of these emotive faculties. Okay, what do we get from these stages? And what do they really point at? The first point is something that wasn't so clear during the class, and I heard it from the Rav afterwards, and we put it in the summary, the written summary. I think this is something that inspired me maybe the most out of everything. He said, well, when you look at these 7 stages, and again, I recommend that you look at the chart, you'll see that the second position is always filled by the same person, by Naomi. She's the mother of the family. So the first thing that came out is that what makes a Jewish family is the mother. She's the one that's constant. And I think that this is one of the greatest things that you can tell to, whether if you're married to your wife, or if you're, or obviously if you're a son or a daughter, and hopefully your mother is here. If you're a child, the thing to say to your mother is, and to recognize is that she really holds the family together. That really the Jewish family is built around the mother. That's why Judaism also goes after the mother, whether you're a Jew or not. But it's not just that. It's that Naomi's name means pleasantness. She's pleasant. That what keeps the family together is that regardless of the ups and downs, and truly this story is a saga. I mean, this is at the level of changes and trials and tribulations in people's lives that, thank God, most people don't have to go through. But whatever we go through today, we can truly identify and sympathize with Naomi and her family. And what kept the family together, what made it possible, not just for the family to survive, but for Ruth to give birth to King David, for the kingdom, the kings of the Jewish people to come out of this family, was Naomi's pleasantness. Her ability to continue through everything, I guess with a smile, with a pleasant smile on her face. Always being able to pick herself up, always being able to realize that the eternity comes out of the family. That the great things that we do are not just us personally, but rather how we act together and how God's name is inscribed and found in every single family. And there's not a Jewish family in which God's name is not inscribed in this way. And the whole idea of these stages is to show that whatever kind of configuration you have, we violate the pigeon-hole principle, and we always fill all the letters of God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. That was the first thing that really inspired me. The second thing was, and we talked about this a little in the beginning, is that even people that pass away, or people who have not yet been born into the family, make an impression. Meaning that there is no such thing as really separation that is complete. Even after passing, and the people that were important to us, they continue to play a role in how God's name is called upon us in our family. More importantly, maybe, the people who have not yet been born, or the people we have not yet met, that we don't know that are going to become part of our family, might actually be inspiring us now and moving us now already to have God's name called upon us. And that's an incredible thing, that it could be that you're being affected by the past or the future, which, by the way, the Rab said is another one of Aharonov's proofs in quantum mechanics, something he developed with David Bohm, his mentor. But this idea that you're being affected by the past and the future in your present situation gives you the feeling that you're not alone. That you're not alone in the sense that you're not working just with the energies and just with the abilities that you have as an individual in this life. Maybe we'll do another review. If we do, then we'll go into some of these other topics more in depth. There's a lot more to explain. I recommend again that you download the summary, the transcript, which is really an edited version of the whole class. And I would like to remind you that we're going to have the second monthly broadcast on Sunday, July 31st. It'll be at the same time, 6:30 p.m. in Israel, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, and 8:30 on the West Coast. We invite you to join us again, and like the last time, we're going to have a special on some book from the many books that Rav Ginsburg has written in English, and we're going to have questions and answers with the audience. We're going to try to get our act together better than it was last time, and be able to field questions from the internet audience. I just want to tell you that last time we had upwards of 700 people watching the broadcast, and we really hope that we're going to break 1,000 this time. So July 31st, and go into our Inner.org, Inner.org, INNER.org website, and take a look there at our live broadcast. Sign up. It'll give you a reminder a day or two before the class so you don't miss it. And we're looking forward to seeing you and enjoying more of Torah together.